Evening. It is Tuesday, October 3rd, 7 p.m. It is Tuesday, October 3rd, 7 p.m. I bring this meeting to order. Roll call.
Councilman Becker,
Here.
Councilman Jekyll,
Here.
Councilman Lesko here,
Here.
Councilman Schultz,
Here.
President Johnson.
Here. We have public hearings tonight. We have two of them.
So I think Engineer Selly, if you could make your presentation, and then we'll the council president will open the public hearing relating to discontinuance of a portion of James Place.
Sounds good. Let me screen share this here real quick. Just bear with me a second. All righty. Good evening. So the Public Works and Parks Operation Facility, that is the name of our proposed new facility down on James Place. I can't make the little scroll go away there at the top. Maybe it will eventually. But anyway, I wanted to kind of review where we're at with this project. On October 17th at the City Council meeting, there'll be a very detailed review provided by Tom Williamson on the project. But specific to this right-of-way discontinuance or street vacation, as we commonly hear it, I wanted council to sort of understand how we got here and why we're asking for this. Approvals to date on this campus, on basically what we've been designing and evaluating on this campus, include that facility assessment that we did in 2022 with Engberg Anderson. If you recall, that firm took a look at all of our equipment, our future needs, our existing needs, and really defined the space that we needed and answered the question, can we stay on the site or do we need to look elsewhere? The facility, and the answer was we could stay on the site. The facility design, we contracted for that in February of 2023 with Angus Young. The design of the campus facilities is well underway. I'm guessing 80 to 90%, roughly speaking, through that process, with our schedule being to put this out to bid in late November and early December of this year to get pricing. We went forward with a resolution to reimburse through borrowing in April of 2023. So essentially what council did was staff indicated, well, council didn't ask, but needed to know, how are we going to pay for all this stuff? City staff indicated that we will put forward a future borrowing in 2024. And we established a resolution signed by and approved by council indicating that we would earmark these expenses that we're incurring right now for design and things of that nature to that future borrowing that will come forward before you in 2024. And then the purchase of the NASCO properties, as we found out in the facility assessment phase, we needed a few more acres basically to stay on the existing site. And we closed the purchase of those parcels roughly to the east of the current facility in May of 2023. Future considerations that will come before council. So tonight we're talking about the right-of-way vacation of a portion of James Place. I'll get to some maps with that here in a minute. We are considering also this evening the first reading of a rezoning of the parcel. So that parcel is currently institutional for what we occupy now. The new parcels that we have acquired are, I believe, light industrial, if I'm not mistaken. Jed will correct me if I'm wrong on that here later in the meeting. And so we need to rezone that to institutional. Certified survey map, we'll just simply be combining all of these parcels into a single parcel. That will come before council at their October 17th meeting. And then a conditional use site plan review that will only come before the Planning Commission at their October 24th meeting. So that's where we'll go through the details of making sure that our own project meets all the zoning requirements, et cetera. And then the formal borrowing process that I mentioned, we kind of earmarked under that resolution to reimburse in April of last year. That will begin in December of this year. April of this year. That will begin in December of this year. There is a fairly well laid out process that will run from December, I think, through roughly the 1st of June to get through the end of it, but a number of steps in that process, the first of which begins with council approval in December of 23. And then finally, the contractor selection. So as I mentioned, we'll put this out to bid in November, most of December, and currently as scheduled early January, and it could be first week of January or so, we hope to be awarding a contract to build this facility to a firm. So those are all things that are going to be moving forward in the future. The site itself, I think we're all fairly familiar with it, but when we look at it from an aerial view, it's nice to see a few landmarks. So here in the lower left is the Fireside facility. The big white area up here is NASCO. Janesville Avenue is in yellow here along the left. Rockwell Avenue is in yellow on the top. Eric Street, Talcott Street kind of winding its way through. And then I've outlined a couple of buildings that I want you to sort of use as landmarks for the next slide. The one in red is the current parks facility. That's where we keep DPW equipment, and primarily a lot of the parks operations are out of that building. The yellow area is the area that we're talking about requesting the right-of-way vacation this evening for. And then the green is an outline of the Firesides facility that they have on the site there with the large red roof on it. So if you think about those, the right-of-way vacation in particular, and then those two buildings, which will be seen on the next slide, that'll help you orient yourself a bit. So this is the proposed layout of the new facility. So again, orienting yourself, here is the existing building that is that parks area or parks building. That's going to stay. And then this is the building in the lower right here that is the Firesides large facility. And then the yellow area is that portion of James Place, which we're considering this evening for the street vacation. Elements of this plan, and again, I'm going to move through this fairly quickly because Tom will provide you a much more detailed understanding and assessment of this area and presentation on October 17th. But the large facility that we have up here is really the main building that we're constructing new. We will exit that building onto Eric Street. We'll have employee parking down here in the lower right corner. There'll be an entrance off of Talcott here and an entrance off of what we would consider to be the James Place, the remainder of James Place, should the council consider approving the vacation this evening. Would be right in this area over here on the left-hand side. The buildings that you see, I think you can still see my cursor here. The buildings you see down here will be a salt shed within that area. We'll have bins for storage of materials down in this area here. There's a scale and a turnaround within this area here. And you can kind of get a sense by looking at this why we need to vacate this portion of James Place. It certainly is going to make for a more secure site. We'll have a fence that is meets our zoning regulations around this. We'll have gated access up at this end and over on this end as well. But without vacating James Place, we're essentially cut off from this parcel that currently has the Quonset hut on the south side of James Place. We have three landowners along James Place: the city, NASCO, and the Fireside. We approached the Fireside and NASCO. NASCO had one concern, and that was that their loading dock, I'm going to flip back to this page here. They have a loading dock located in this area right here. They wanted to make sure that access was always maintained to that loading dock for them to back up a semi in that area. And we've worked that out visually on the site by showing that we've got plenty of room there. We also are putting in place an easement, which will be permanent, giving them that right within the paved section of James Place. And then the Fireside will be losing an entrance down in this area, which I must say I was a bit nervous in having that conversation with them about, but they were actually quite happy that that's happening. That's used as a cut through between James Place and Talcott or Hilltop over there, and they've had some issues with that, with folks in their parking lot and vehicles moving through rather quickly. So they were very happy about that. We do have some parking changes that will occur over in this area for the fireside, and we've committed to them in this particular area here to restripe this area, make sure that we can preserve as many spaces as we can for them. And they were good with that. So all three landowners signed the petition indicating that they were requesting the vacation and that they were on board with that. And that has been provided to council within your packet this evening. We did have this presented at the Planning Commission meeting last Tuesday. Also in a public forum to let the Planning Commission know where we were going with this and kind of give them a bit of a sense as you have now this evening. For the overall project. We did have a few questions from residents afterwards. We also talked about the rezoning in that same meeting. So residents in the area received a letter related to the rezoning request. Most of the questions from residents were related to headlights that might be shining into existing homes along Eric Street and things of that nature, which we talked about. We've taken account for that in the design of the exit area and things like that. As well as increased traffic was a concern, which we will not be increasing any traffic in the area as our operation isn't increasing. We're just simply basically building a new home for our existing fleet of vehicles and our existing staff. So those are the only resident feedback comments that we'd had. And I think it was 2 residents that were there. So the process for discontinuance is public notice. It's a class 3 notice, which is the highest class, meaning that we have to advertise this out in the paper and get it out to the public at least 3 times in 3 separate weeks. The last one being at least a week before tonight's meeting. So we've done that. And as I said, we've engaged with the adjacent landowners within the area as well. So with that, I think, can I take questions from council now, or would it be better later?
No, let's wait till it's on the agenda for council questions, but now, President Johnson, you can open the public hearing.
Okay.
I now open the public hearing for comments on this issue. If you wish to speak, please approach the podium, give your name and your address, and you'll be allowed to have a comment if you wish.
John House, 104 Jefferson Street. When I look at this map, Andy, where is the old offices on here or the new offices? I don't see that.
Yeah,
Like, isn't this where it used to be in this area? Is there new offices in the new building?
yeah. So John, oh, look at that. I can see my cursor there too. Magic of technology. So the existing truck shed, we call it, that's the most northern building that we have. That sits in this footprint. It's much smaller. The existing salt shed that we have sits in this footprint as well, kind of in this corner. The existing brick building, 1-story brick building, which has been known as the Union Hall. I don't know why, but it seems to have that name among a lot of folks, is right around in this area here where the parking lot is. And then let me minimize this. And then the existing, what was an old house, but has been used by NASCO right at the corner here of Eric Street and Talcott is kind of in that area. The current mechanic and shop area that we have, which is generally where most of the public interacts, is right in this area here. Yeah, you're right. It is, and it won't be destroyed until the new facility is up and running, because we cannot live without our mechanics. As well as a number of other things, but that by far is one of our most critical assets. It will. I don't want to steal the thunder from October 17th when Tom will present all those details, but yeah, for sure.
Is it better to wait for the
Uh,
October 17th? Sorry.
Can you approach the podium, please?
Jody Raditz, 1245 Jeanette Street. Is it just better to wait until the October meeting to ask the questions? Like, do they have a projection of how much it's gonna cost or?
Yep, any, those sorts of, so cost, what it's gonna look like, what's the landscaping gonna look like, where are the fences at, what's the ingress and egress, are we gonna have a flagpole or not? All of that is the detail that will be at that October 17th meeting. This really, I just wanted to justify why, to the public, why we were requesting to vacate the public right of way and show that with the layout that we have. So,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Andy, can you maybe pull this down so we can see if there's anybody on the Zoom wishing to participate in the public hearing?
Is there anyone else in this room who wishes to speak? Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to comment on this issue? Last call for public comment on this issue. This hearing is closed. We move on. Item B, proposed amendments to chapter 70 of the City of Fort Atkinson Municipal Ordinance, section 70.04.03 and 70.04.04 to update and enact a new park impact fees.
We have Ben Rohr from Bandwell and Associates here to make a presentation prior to the public hearing.
Here, Ben.
All right. Hello again. And this is for council members, second crack at pretty much the same content of the presentation. But we did have that workshop about a month or so ago. We received generally pretty solid feedback from this group in relationship to what was proposed. Since that time, it has gone to the Plan Commission and the Parks Committee for a review similar to this one. And so today is the public hearing associated with the project, and in particular, the code amendments that are proposed. And then following that will be two more public hearings before, or two more public readings prior to action consideration. So generally speaking, how did we get here? The adoption of the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan for the city of Fort Atkinson occurred back in February. As part of that park plan, it was recommended to explore and reevaluate the park impact fees associated with how the structure of fees are used to support new park development within the community in reflection of the recommendations throughout the comprehensive outdoor rec plan. However, a city initiative goal, obviously something that's been on the forefront of everyone's mind that we've been working on collectively has been to support the growth of housing within the community. So we want to take a keen eye when we're looking at park impact fees to balance the need for not only what the corp was recommending, but also, those ongoing housing initiatives that the community has. In 2017, the state statutes changed in terms of how a community can impose park impact fees. It required three different layers of component, being the analysis or the needs assessment, the ordinance being the policy, where that actually lives within the city's ordinances, and then the process, the procedural steps that we are on the path towards accomplishing here and have been for this past couple of months. So what are park impact fees? These are fees that are only imposed on any new residential development to support additional parkland and the development of that land into a park due to the increased demand from new residents associated with the new development. There are three types, commonly referred to as a parkland dedication, or the amount of land that's dedicated per new unit for park purposes. In contrast to that, if there is no land available, a fee in lieu of parkland dedication or an amount per unit to acquire, to give the city, so the city can acquire a piece of property for a new park. And then finally, park improvement fees, meaning taking that raw land and turning it into a park with benches, playgrounds, all of those types of things. When we collect these types of fees from new residential development, we have a clock that ticks in terms of 8 years per statutory requirements, and we are only allowed to use this money to facilitate the development of new park and new park facilities. Today, the city imposes a parkland dedication and fee in lieu of parkland dedication. It does not currently impose a park improvement fee. In terms of the parkland dedication, it's divided up into 3 different categories, meaning single family and 2 family have one standard, multifamily a different standard, and commercial and industrial a third standard. In the instance where a developer would not be able to provide parkland dedication in physical acreage, then a fee in lieu would be imposed upon that in respect to at this current existing provision of $1,600 per unit or 8% of raw land value. So the draft needs assessment is truly the analysis components to create how we landed on the new fees that are proposed. I'm sorry. So basically it's the analysis, all the calculations, all of the components that go into why are we at this number in terms of a proposed fee. There's required components, one being the assessment that's done as part of the corp, the impact fee standard being the analysis and calculations that you'll see throughout the document, the ordinance, and then finally the accounting piece being the administrative behind the scenes components. And a key component of the draft needs assessment is that sets the maximum or the ceiling that the city can impose. The city can go underneath that maximum in any rate that it sees fit. It cannot exceed whatever that maximum is listed within the analysis of the needs assessment. So what we did through the needs assessment is I started by identifying the maximum, and then on the next slide I'll show you that we identified a recommended version that was a slightly different approach. As you'll see, we broke up the different fees between single family and 2 family versus multifamily and senior, and I'll get into a little bit more as to how we arrived at those percentages. We also added a improvement fee in relationship to what was recommended within the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, and adjusted the land dedication and fee in lieu for all of those different components based on updated projections, and remove the commercial and industrial standard because that was simply something that in our analysis of over 20 different communities within Wisconsin is something that we have not found or seen to be a relevant practice around the state. Recommended, you'll see the parkland dedication and fee in lieu stay the same in relationship to the recommended fees. However, the improvement fee is significantly lower, and I'll get into the next slide as to how we got there. So what's the difference between the maximum and the recommended amount? The parkland dedication and fee in lieu are based on updated population and household projections over the next 5 and 10 years. What are we looking at in terms of population? How much would we need to facilitate the development of new park space to fit that demand in terms of what we're projecting? It also includes, the maximum does, of the development of a new neighborhood and community park, meaning 2 different large scale parks with a large number of facilities. Basically, if we were going to do everything we could possibly want and imagine inside of a park, this is how much it would cost to get there. So that sets our maximum. What we did with the recommended is we did some fine tuning. We looked at the parkland dedication and the fee in lieu. We reflected what that maximum standard had in there because it was reflective of projections that didn't necessarily weren't changed as in relationship to that analysis. However, the improvement fee, we did make some tweaks in relationship to the neighborhood park that is planned as part of the Banker Road neighborhood plan that's been adopted and reflected in various community documents and goals over the last several years, and is beginning implementation in the coming year. And so that is the park we have on our horizon. that is the park we want to plan for. And so these fees are reflective of how we get to accomplish that new park in that space as we have planned. I won't hit every single one of these, but there are slight differences between the existing fees and the comprehensive outdoor recreation plan and what you'll see in the needs assessment. The key to note is there's no calculation or methodology provided as to how the existing fees were derived. They were in place prior to 2017 when the statute did not require the level of analysis that they do now. So we don't know exactly how they were derived using what calculation. We did a significant amount of research looking at over 20 different communities in comparable size within Jefferson, Walworth, Dane County, and Waukesha County, looked at those, found where these recommended standards fell within that, and felt comfortable in saying that remains and keeps the city of Fort Atkinson in a competitive environment, but also enhances and provides quality of life for new residents that may move to the community. You've already heard several of these things, but added a breakdown between different unit types in relationship to single family, two family, multifamily, senior, removed the commercial and industrial, and took a slightly different projection methodology approach and customized those costs to really reflect the improvements of the Banker Road neighborhood plan. So as we all are aware, what are the potential outcomes of this process? Any sort of change to a fee, any creation of a new fee, obviously is going to impact the costs of new construction. Because what's going to happen is a new housing project is proposed, that developer will take the upfront costs of these impact fees and most likely pass those along to the new homeowner or new renter in the development that is created. However, on the flip side of that, we want to make more money available for land for new parks and money to develop that land into parks to meet the demand that we foresee over the next 5 to 10 years within the community, and continue to enhance the quality of life for residents, not only existing, but future. We want them to stay in the community. And so we try to take an adjusted approach by unit type, balancing all of the data that we had in an attempt to balance the demand associated with different unit types, in particular persons per household. So thinking about it in respect to a single family or two family home, typically a larger unit in terms of square footage, usually a larger amount of people on average in a family that live in that space in comparison to a multifamily apartment, for example, or a senior oriented living environment, for example, as well. So the recommended calculations are an attempt to account for a variety of these pros and cons, balance the need for not only allowing and facilitating new housing to happen within the community, but also to provide money and available land for park development in the future to serve the Fort Atkinson residents of today and moving forward. So with that, we have a public hearing and first reading, obviously tonight, council's second reading in the 17th, and then November 17th, it is proposed for action. Thank you.
I now open this to a public hearing. For those who wish to comment on this issue, please approach the podium and state your name and your address.
Must be my night. John House, 104 Jefferson Street. I disagree with most everything he said. I'm very familiar with subdivisions, how much money's involved. And the one I can tell you is I used to own the land that Culver's is on and Pick and Save. I actually had that under contract for a while, backed out of it. Ramesh Shah bought it. He was the back side of it, which butts up against my land. If he'd have sold all those lots back in there that are underwater now, he would have made himself a cool $9 million. What did he give us? And that's the previous council. He gave us about 1/3 of an acre for a park. Okay. All right. Who paid for the equipment? Hopefully not us taxpayers. I mean, if he's going to make $6 million, the person that's doing the subdividing, hey, if he's got to pass it on to the people that are buying, great. I don't want to pay for it. So I guess that's all I have at this particular moment to say, but I'll be back.
Thank you. Others who wish to have a comment?
Hi, I'm Calmer now. Jody Raditz, 1245 Jeanette Street. Thank you for the presentation. I always admire people who can get up and just speak. But are the parks all different? Like you talked about doing the parks, but like, are they different kind of parks? Are like they a wooden park? Are they, some parks really pull people together and some are just there? And then, like, I wonder if there's swings for older people. I mean, I love the parks for the little kids, but I've been to many different parks and I'm like really concerned about that. I know the young moms in the area would really love a splash pad. So I'm wondering, is that involved with any of your things? And is there a place I can go to learn more about this?
So I can answer that for you,
Thank you,
Jody.
Rebecca.
In the needs assessment that's in the packet,
Okay,
it goes through what is planned for this neighborhood park.
okay.
So these impact fees are for a specific planned park. It hasn't been exactly planned yet because it doesn't exist quite yet.
Right.
But it is for a neighborhood park that it includes some amenities and all those are listed in that plan, the needs assessment that's in the packet. Okay. And that is based on what was approved through the comprehensive outdoor recreation or the CORP plan earlier this year.
Okay,
So these fees right now, the recommended fees are to accommodate this one park. And the CORP is reviewed every 5 years, and it is anticipated that these fees would be reviewed every 5 years as well.
and yeah, okay. And is there any? Does the city have, like in Florida, we had a 2020 program where they bought up land so they could make it public land usage for like walking trails or whatever. And I thought, does Fort Atkinson do that at all?
We have things in our comprehensive plan and things in that comprehensive outdoor recreation plan that have elements of that, but we don't have a plan to buy land for those specific purposes outside of those plans at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
Andy, do you want to pull down the PowerPoint again so we can see if there's anybody on the Zoom who'd like to participate?
Oh, else.
Anyone on Zoom who wishes to make a comment on this issue? Last call for public comment. This public hearing is closed. We move on to public comment. The city council will receive comments from city residents. Comments are generally limited to 3 minutes per individual. Anyone wishing to speak is required to sign up in advance or state the following items for the record when called upon: name, address, subject matter, and contact information. No action will be taken on any of these public comments unless the item is also elsewhere on the agenda. If you're on the hybrid and Zoom meeting with us, if you wish to make a comment during the public comment, please raise your virtual hand through Zoom, as the chat box is not monitored during the meeting and those on the call must remain muted if not recognized to speak. We have several people signed up to speak tonight. We have one unfortunate man whose address does not qualify for him to speak tonight. I'm sorry, Mr. Bentheimer, but you need to live inside city limits to do this. Our next speaker will be Greg Carroll.
Evening, Greg Carroll. I live at 1407 Montclair Place, Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. Like to support or be here to speak with the support of the UTV ATV agenda. I moved onto that street 22 years ago. When I moved there, I moved across the street from a person named Aaron Warren, who was a paraplegic. I took care of his house, his sidewalk, his driveway, all the times that I could during the winter time. Kept the city streets clean so he wouldn't get tickets, made sure his driveway was clean so his wife could go in and out to school and work. Aaron lost his life this last spring. I will still continue to clean his driveway and stuff for his wife, his daughter, and that. I also take care of the gentleman down the street who's had bypass surgery, the lady down the street who's battling cancer. Our fire hydrants are always cleaned out. And the last two snowstorms of last year, if you guys can remember how wet they were, my whole neighborhood loved me because everybody got cleaned out. And in a timely manner, no ice left over, and it was all nice and safe. That's all I'd like to say is I'm in support of it for that reason. I can do that in wintertime. Summertime, I can't do anything. There's my agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Ronald Jones. John House.
John House, 104 Jefferson Street in town. I was lucky enough to be able to go to my 55-year class reunion. I've ran into a gentleman I hadn't seen in 40 years. His wife was my classmate. We had a doctor in town. His name was Dr. Hunsader. I think, Bruce, you might be the only oldest one that would remember Dr. Hunsader.
I do remember the man.
Okay, well, his daughter Jane was in my class. Okay, Jane married, moved down to Darien. She was out for a walk one day on public access roadway, walkway. Tree branch came down, killed her. Okay, I'm here because I brought up those dead trees in the parks. I think it's abhorring that they're not getting taken down. I've asked a couple times. I did get some response. I guess I'll tell you, go to Berry Park. There's a dead tree with the branch hanging right over the bench. If that breaks off, it'll kill somebody. Tree could kill somebody. There's a tree across from Sal's. It's 90 feet high. If it falls over, could go all the way across the highway, crush a car. Gee, it's been there at least 2 years, maybe 3. I know our ex-city attorney, actually, him and I had a talk about it probably 2-3 years ago. There's also one at the boat landing out by Kmart, where Kmart used to be. I pulled in to launch my boat, got out and I looked up, I thought, wow, I could get killed here. So I guess, gee, we don't have any money. Well, that can't be true because we just spent $500,000 on land for Larson or for our building. We just spent 700,000 plus for that new subdivision that we're putting up. Can't we hire somebody to come and take these down? So I guess, yeah, and I know the tornado came through and the guys worked hard doing that, but these were up there since the tornado, so. That's all I have to say tonight, folks. Thank you.
Next, we have Dean Trust.
I'm Dean Trost, 1315 Montclair Place, Fort Atkinson. And I'm just here to thank all the board members for getting to this first reading of the ATV UTV ordinance, including along with Rebecca and Chief Baum. I'm hoping, we have some really good things come out of this. Thank you. I know it's getting late, so.
Anyone on Zoom who wish to comment on this? Anyone else in the room wish to comment on this?
One more comment. John House, 104 Jefferson Street. Just so everybody is aware, there was a lawsuit, cost big bucks. So that is something that they went after. And it doesn't help the pain, so I'm just sharing that stuff.
First call for any more public comments? Second call for public comments? Third and final call for public comment? Seeing that we have none, we'll move on to item 5, the consent agenda. The consent agenda is outlined below, is hereby presented for action by the city council. Items may be removed from the consent agenda upon request of any one council member. Items not removed may be adopted by one action without debate. Removed items may be taken up either immediately after the consent agenda or placed later on the agenda at the discretion of the city council president.
I would move to approve the consent agenda as listed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, petitions, requests, and communications. Tonight we have none. Item 7, resolutions and ordinances. Item A, first reading of an ordinance related to amendments to section 94-151 of the City of Fort Atkinson Municipal Code for the use of all-terrain vehicles, ATVs on city streets.
So you have in your packet, a draft ordinance amending section 94-151 of the municipal code, to allow ATVs and UTVs on city streets. The ordinance committee discussed this matter at the meeting on July 6th, and then the full council actually held 2 different workshops relating to this matter on August 15th and September 18th. Council did direct staff to make changes to that draft ordinance and prepare it for a first reading at the meeting tonight here. So changes from the last workshop include the hours of operation, requirements relating to tire tread depth, and requirements for eye protection. So those are all included in the ordinance. I will say that staff does not support changing the city's ordinance to allow ATV use in the city due to the safety and enforcement concerns, as well as the lack of consistent regulatory direction from the state of Wisconsin. Staff recommends that the city council delay any decisions relating to ATV use within the city until such time that the state provides additional direction relating to the applicability of state motor vehicle laws to ATVs. I would be happy to answer any questions relating to the ordinance.
I have one issue with the ordinance that I'd like to address as far as eye protection. I would like to see if we could position it so that we add windshields to the approved eye protection.
I agree, thank you.
We need to go through formal motion for that, I would assume.
Yes, if you could make a motion to amend that section. Let me just get there. Let's see. Yes, so that is, scroll back up here, section 94-157. Sub P, eye protection. So you are proposing to amend that section, President Johnson, to include a windshield as one of the options for eye protection.
Yes, I move to make such a change.
Manager Lemire, could-
The height of that windshield?
I would go with the regular or the state requirement for motorcycles that reflects 15 inches above handlebars.
Okay.
Manager Lemire, I didn't quite catch the full section number you listed there.
So it's section 94-157, sub
Okay.
P, the
Alright.
section on eye protection.
Thank you.
So there's a motion to add a windshield as one of the options for required eye protection, and that windshield would be 15 inches above the handle.
I'll second the motion.
I guess my only concern is, some UTVs have steering wheels, not handlebars. So I just want to make sure that as this gets added or modified, that, we're keeping that in mind. Obviously motorcycles don't have steering wheels, but UTVs can. I think the other thing too, do we need to be concerned about like the material of windscreen? Like if someone puts a piece of saran wrap, right? And I understand, bear with me, I know that's preposterous, but I also understand how people operate. So I don't know if that's something that we need to be cognizant of, as it gets written into the ordinance.
I think I understand the intent.
Okay.
So we'll take a look at it for
Okay.
the second reading.
I'm curious, I guess I'll ask President Johnson since he's the one who raised this. I'm not familiar with. That point hadn't been raised before in either the workshops that we had. Are you basing this as something that another community has implemented, or is this something that's recommended best practice by one of the groups involved? I'm just curious.
I'm basing this off what is Wisconsin law on use of a motorcycle. You must have eye protection unless you have a windshield that meets the requirements.
Okay.
I think one of us brought it up at the workshop about the eye protection.
Okay.
And I think when I had thought of it, I had thought of reflecting the motorcycle ruling to it or state law.
All right. Thank you.
Did we carry a motion and pass that?
You have a motion and a second on the floor to amend the ordinance.
I move to amend the ordinance to include windshields.
You have a motion and a second on the floor.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. As-
Mr. President, I do
Yes.
have couple points I'd like to go over on the hours of operation. And this is the first time we've actually gotten to a point where we've had a vote on any of these matters. And just by way of reviewing where we started, the original draft, and I'll point out the section, it's section 94-157, subsection G. And right now, as it is, we're proposing no person shall operate an all-terrain utility terrain vehicle in the city between 10 PM and 5 AM. Originally, we were looking from at dusk and 9 AM. And I don't know that we've had unanimity in what are the appropriate hours. I would like to offer, I would move to amend that section G to read, no person shall operate an all-terrain utility terrain vehicle in the city between 9 PM and 8 AM.
Can I just offer insight to this as far as?
You would need a second to discuss.
I will second, so we can move to discussion. Yeah, Mr. President, could you, I guess, one of our neighboring jurisdictions or close proximity, I believe Jefferson, is changing theirs to 10 PM to 5 AM.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
in further debate of this, I would like to read what the city of Jefferson did. They also have 6-month sunsets. They've had a couple of them. And the one that they had approximately 2 weeks ago, they moved this. It said, whereas the city finds that the use of ATVs and UTVs have not been problematic for the safety and well-being of the citizens of the city, and therefore the use of these vehicles can be expanded as set forth below, and they moved to go to the 10 PM and 5 AM as what we have currently in our ordinance, and they passed it. So it's they're our next door city, and they have not experienced these problems, and they have had some background in how their city worked, and it did not affect the safety of their citizens.
I will offer, I spoke to a member of the Jefferson City Council today, actually, somebody who I had spoken to previously about this, and they shared that, you know, things have been going really well, and yes, they did vote to expand the hours like you cited, and you know, I think they even had a sunset provision that they ended up removing because they felt that this was going well in their community. So I guess, you know, I know we've gone back and forth on the hours. I'm just not quite sure what we'd be accomplishing setting our hours different than surrounding communities.
So here's my thought process, and I have enjoyed the participation of those who have come here and representing the ATV UTV community. I've read the materials that you've provided, familiarized myself with your with any social media presence, and I have very much appreciated your input along the way. It's important to this process. It very much is. And I've been weighing that against the positions of our city staff and our police chief, and the chief particularly, who has clearly articulated his safety and enforcement objections. And then all along at the same time, I continue to field or to find public sentiment is overwhelmingly opposed to this ordinance. So I am trying to find some kind of common ground here where perhaps there's some give and take where we weigh the safety components. And I assume that the police chief's hours that were originally suggested were to try to, if we were going to pass an ordinance, have it so that the majority of the hours would be during daylight when it is presumably safer. Is it safe to say, chief? And of all of the people who have contacted me or who I have asked for their opinion on how they feel about this, safety is their primary concern. I pointed out some stats at our last workshop, and I just want to reiterate those because that's the position. That's where I'm coming from. It's largely safety related. And so this is data, again, that was in the August 23rd, 2023 Wisconsin State Journal. And it came from the Wisconsin DNR. And it was 2022 crash data for ATVs and UTVs. Combined, there were 232 crashes. They resulted in 255 injuries and 21 deaths. So that is a really high percentage. If there is an accident, that there's going to be injuries involved and they could be very serious. Now, what they didn't call out is how many of those happened on public roadways or how many happened on private. But we all have also received in our packet continuing updates of the fatal incidents involving ATVs and UTVs over the past 3 years. And it is alarming how many of them happen on public roadways. I don't have the exact numbers. I haven't added them all up, but there are more than a fair amount. I find that troubling. So if we are going to proceed with an ordinance, I would like to be as cautious as possible, and maybe somewhere down the road, my caution will prove to be overblown on my part. That is my suggestion of why I would like to see an amendment to the hours.
I would like to keep the hours as written on the ordinance that we have before us. I don't want to see the confusion to other people or or surrounding people who will be out ATVing and suddenly find confusion and appear in our city at an hour that we don't allow because they said believe every place else, which for the most part are very similar every place else. And that would to me cause an issue where our police department would there be spending more man hours dealing with this than necessary. Jefferson has already gone through a year of having reduced hours more down the path that you request. And they, after their review of it of over a year of this, have come to the conclusion that that it was not a need or a safety issue by doing that. That would be resolved. I guess the being uniform with the other areas, I think is important for all parties concerned and not having safety issues for that. As far as easier to see an ATV in the daylight versus at night with the ordinance requiring lights. I think that that's not true. You'll see them easier at night with lights than you will even in the daytime, because a lot of people, I know with my motorcycle, even with lights during the daytime, people who are driving don't respect motorcycles based on the fact they look down the street. If they don't see a car, they don't see anything. At night, that won't happen with a light on it. They will realize there's a vehicle there and in motion.
I will just say too, the city, I'd be more amped to follow your concerns with the darkness in the countryside, where we don't have street lights helping light most of the city blocks. Where in town, most city blocks do have some sort of lighting that does help you see the vehicles coming.
One point on the uniform ordinance, like the surrounding townships that we have been provided, or that I've gone to and checked out their links. Yes, it is true. The majority have hours of what is currently proposed in the ordinance, but not all of them. So there isn't a uniform time of operation from there. And I keep coming back to, there has to be a reason why the state has been unable or perhaps unwilling to enact uniform legislation on this topic. And I don't know what that may be. But that's how we wind up with a patchwork quilt of local ordinances that are in sporadic pockets across the map. Individual municipalities are left to their own devices to decide what is or isn't appropriate locally. And I will just keep coming back to the fact that city staff, our police chief, and by and large, nearly everybody who has shared their opinion outside of these chambers with me is opposed to the ordinance entirely, not just the hours of operation.
And my experience with the public has been quite the reverse of what your experience has been. But we have more comments from any of the council people or debates? We do have a motion and a second on the floor to
I have a
reduce.
clarifying. So looking at the packet, the data as of September 14th, 2023, I'm counting 4 on public roads. 2 of which, if I could read these quickly, alcohol BAC of 0.284. The second one, there's a couple pending. And I thought I saw one more that was in the 0.28. Yeah, so 0.284 and 0.328 alcohol content. So I guess in the future, I guess if evidence points that, sober drivers are being injured or are being injured during this time frame of modifying it at the future time, but I would agree with Council President of maintaining the current hours listed in the current ordinance.
And we're going to have a 6 months, we're going to have the chat again, and if we're having troubles. However, we do have a motion and a second to amend the hours to Mr. Lesko-Hare's desires. I'd like to see this as a roll call vote, so there's no dispute about how council feels.
I will take the roll. Councilman Becker,
Nay.
Councilman Jekyll,
Nay.
Councilman Lesko-Hare,
Aye.
Councilman Schultz,
Nay.
President Johnson.
Nay,
Please have it.
motion does not pass. Still back on track here.
One other point,
Yes, sir.
and I just for my own knowledge, then if this goes through its normal 3 readings, is passed in early November, is it our plan to still get signs up and post for before the winter season hits, or would this be something we would hold off until the spring?
I personally would look at this hold off till spring. I would think that with the ground frozen and things not organized and signs not ordered, we'd need to put a a gap in time for us to put this in motion?
What is kind of the time frame on ordering signs and or installing?
I think we wouldn't order anything until the ordinance is passed.
Okay,
And I have no idea how long a time that would take for the signs to appear once ordered.
I mean, I would see if, there are still several citizens that, have UTVs that are capable of driving in the wintertime. If it's not to cause problems, to start it out, even if it's not till middle of January that it becomes effective, that still gives quite a few months to begin slowly bringing it in, not open it up in May and all of a sudden we have a mad dash. It'd be a little more of a phased in situation.
As part of this ordinance, the council could set an effective date.
I think that's something we can sort it out. We've had good discussions again tonight and raised some good concerns. I think the effective date probably should be looked at and added in. At this time, I will move to direct the city manager to prepare this ordinance for a second reading at the October 17th, 2023 city council meeting.
Second.
And just to clarify, that's as amended? With the-
Yes.
With the
as a-
amendment
Section
relating
P.
to the windshield eye protection?
Yes.
Thank you.
I think we're gonna have a roll call vote on this issue too. This is an important issue across the board. We've had a motion and a second.
Yeah, 1 second, please.
We have not had a second.
There's a second.
Yep, we have a motion, a second. I will take the roll. Councilman Becker,
Aye.
Councilman Jekyll,
Aye.
Councilman Lesko Hair,
Nay.
Councilman Schultz.
Aye.
President Johnson.
Aye.
Have it. Motion carries.
We move on to item B, first reading of an ordinance relating to zoning map amendments to change the zoning district for the properties located at 932 Eric Street, 1000 Eric Street, and 610 Talcott Avenue from light industrial to institutional. Mr. Selly.
We have Jed here with us today.
That's right. It says silly.
It does. It says Sally on the agenda, but we've got
That's not
Mr.
your fault.
got our building inspector, zoning
I was
administrator.
trying to throw you off.
You used to be taller.
So yeah, Mr. Silly actually touched on this earlier with his presentation. Do we have a map that we could bring up, Andy, on this one by chance? If not, I think it was in the packet. It's got that map there. They were labeled 1, 2, and 3 on there. They're the ones adjacent to Eric Street and the one on Talcott Street that we have purchased from the adjacent property owner. Yep, that'll work. Correct. Yep, and they are adjacent and they are, will be coming forward with a CSM in the future to join them with the current DPW site. Currently, they are zoned light industrial, and in order to zone or and to include them with the new DPW site, they would need to be rezoned to institutional to match that zoning. It is in concert with our comprehensive plan. The proposed future use of these would reflect that. One thing that you'll see in the packet, there was a bike path that was through there in our comprehensive plan. As a staff, you'll remember that we added a bike path along Rockwell Avenue. We believe as a staff that accommodates what the intent was there as a connector to that neighborhood. And I guess with that, I open to any questions. I should note staff recommends approval.
I know we have a lot of steps to go through with this planning process, and then getting it to take it out to bid to contractors. Is there any urgency in possibly passing this sooner than third reading?
Yeah, I think anytime we move these things along with a project of this magnitude or size, yes, I think any any way that we can move it along faster is
I
helpful.
appreciate that. Since I fully support this project and believe it's critically necessary, I'm going to move to suspend the suspend the rules of the second and third reading of this ordinance.
All those in favor?
Can we get a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so that motion was to
To
suspend the rules
suspend the
for the
rules.
second and third reading. So
So we still looking for a motion to move forward.
I would move to adopt the ordinance relating to a zoning map amendment to change the zoning district for properties located at 932 Eric Street, 1000 Eric Street, and 610 Talcott Avenue from light industrial to institutional.
Second.
This is a roll call vote.
Councilman Becker,
Aye.
Councilman Jekyll,
I,
Councilman Lesko Hair.
Aye.
Councilman Schultz.
Aye.
President Johnson.
Aye. Motion carries. Item C, first reading of an ordinance to amend sections 70.04.03 and 70.04.04 of the city of Fort Atkinson Land Division Development Ordinance relating to the updating and enacting of new park impact fees. Ms. Franson, please.
Hi, everyone. We've had quite the process regarding these impact fees so far. This is about the fourth time I think we've presented the PowerPoint. Process began with the adoption of the CORP in February that recommended changing the park impact fees to assist in implementation of the plan. April, City Council approved Vanderwall and Associates to be the city's park impact fee consultant. We have worked with Ben at Vanderwall on quite a few iterations with keeping the impact on housing costs in mind. September 5th, we held a workshop with members from City Council, Parks and Rec Advisory Board, Plan Commission, and Economic Development. All participants filled out a questionnaire at the workshop, which revealed unanimous support from all participants for the recommended park impact fees. Then on September 13th, the Parks and Rec Board also recommended and supported those fees. And also on September 26th, Plan Commission supported those fees as well. So today we had our public hearing and first reading, and then just to note, these fees would go into effect with the new fee schedule for 2024. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we're looking for a first reading tonight.
Something I want to just be, disregard. What was presented earlier this evening was the maximum where the recommended improvement fee for single family, two family development was north of 2,000. Just to clarify, the recommended impact fees for the recommended improvement fee for single family and two family was closer to $1,000.
Correct. So he went a little quickly through the maximum showed first, and then it changed
Okay.
to recommended
Gotcha.
afterwards.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think this is kind of a good concept with especially the Banker Road project that we're going to need some more parks with that many places that we hopefully will create. And that we will need to create funding to make that happen, that this will facilitate that very well.
I've got a question related to that. So with the Banker Road development, like the city owns that property, right? So there wouldn't be any property, there wouldn't be any land for a developer to give us because it's the city's land. So they would be, any development along the Banker Road development would be the fee in lieu of?
not necessarily. I mean, because we own the land, the city owns the land now, but the city may end up selling it to a developer as part of a development agreement. Where
Okay.
then they would either dedicate land or provide a payment in lieu of that land dedication
Okay,
for the
thank you.
ordinance.
I think it's probably important to clarify just on that discussion point, the plans we've been presented do incorporate a park into the development.
Correct. And to be clear, as I mentioned before, so this analysis was done with that subdivision in mind. And it's looking out, 10 years. And we're seeing that is the development that would likely happen. So that's why we looked at those maximum fees. Those included a community park and a neighborhood park. And then we looked at them again and said, well, what's realistic for the next 5 years or 10 years as to what's going to develop likely here. So that's why we backed it off to just using that neighborhood park. So, the corp has to be updated every 5 years. We do anticipate updating this every 5 years to reflect the planned development in maybe a different area, or if there's additional planned development, or if we find, we're going to tailor this to what's going on in the community.
To go off of Councilman Schultz's point earlier, I think this has been a really good exercise, and I just want to reiterate what I said at the workshop for this. The fees that are being proposed are not the highest, but we want to stay competitive with other similar communities throughout the area. And yes, while it would be very attractive to be the lowest in the area or not even charge these fees, and yes, that would be attractive to developers, it would actually shortchange our current residents and our future residents, because we wouldn't have these revenues to create future parks with, or make sure they're adequately maintained. So I think this has been a good exercise, and I'm glad that we're kind of staying in that middle of the pack area with this. I'll make the motion to direct the city manager to prepare this ordinance for a second reading at the October 17th, 2023 city council meeting.
Second.
Any further debate? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item D, second reading of an ordinance to amend sections 15.03.28, 15.06.06, 15.06.06, and 15.06.06.21. Guess I missed a couple of numbers there. Then you need to read those again to be,
Do you want me to just?
you go ahead and read it for me.
Second reading of an ordinance to amend sections 15.03.28, 15.06.06 sub 12, 15.06.06 sub 19, 15.06.06 sub 21, and 15.06.06.22 of the zoning ordinance relating to parking and surface standards.
Hello again. Doesn't feel like going to the second reading on these, does it? So if you remember, four of the five started with a initial start of 20 different amendments that we were proposing. And then with further debate and discussion on these, we felt that these would be best to pull off separately and to make some changes with input from staff, residents, and city council members. So with that, I'll go ahead and go through these real quick. The first one, section 1503.28. This is one where we are making some changes to the home occupation permit, allowing for a vehicle or trailer associated with that home occupation permit to be parked in the street, primarily trailers unattached, if they have that home occupation permit. What we're proposing is to remove that and to further require that their 2 spaces be allowed or be required to be maintained on their private property with the home occupation permit. This is probably the one we've worked on the most. This comes with a lot of complaints and concerns from residents about a large number of trailers associated with businesses and things like that. Section 2, 150606, this is, excuse me. This is, the off-street parking. We had originally talked about moving this all to a paved surface. We felt it best, that this was able to maintain as gravel. Somebody with a utility trailer can go ahead and park that utility trailer in the rear yard of their property, and it does not have to be paved. It would have to be on gravel, and does come up with some screening requirements. But this does allow people to park those utility vehicles in the backyard. Section 3, 150606, this is clarifying our surfacing standards. This is something we've been putting in practice, but it is requiring that any newly installed apron and sidewalk in that area be paved per our ordinances, with 6 inches of concrete or with the appropriate asphalt. But it does also make an exception in there for residential asphalt, for a smaller amount of or thickness of that, which is more appropriate for residential. I guess moving on from there, I already touched on the replacement approaches in subsection C. Section 4, 150606. This is where we had proposed to make some changes before, realized that they did not work out the way that we were intending it originally. So we put everything back, but we also eased some of the requirements in here, allowing for some larger vehicles to be parked on personal property, to accommodate for some of those off-street or on-street parking changes that we were making. And that takes us to section 5, that's 150606 subsection 22. This is also easing some of the restrictions for gross vehicle weight and size of those vehicles to be parked on personal property. Once again, to allow for some personal vehicles or some larger vehicles that may be taken from work and back to be parked on your personal property, where we originally or previously was not allowed. So I guess with that, try to go through that quickly. I'll take any questions if you have them.
I'd like to commend you as far as how well this has gone. It has been a very passionate arguments from many directions on many issues. And I believe you did a very fine job of finding a medical solution in the middle. And I commend you for what you've done, Jed.
I appreciate that. It wasn't just me. It was a lot of staff working on this together to come up with solutions, but I do appreciate that. Yes.
Has there been any feedback from the public since the last reading?
No, I have personally have not heard any feedback on this. Yeah.
I move to direct the city manager to prepare this ordinance for a third reading at the October 17th, 2023 city council meeting.
Second.
I have a question though. On section 2, as I read it, paved pads may be used for recreation equipment, et cetera, and screened from view per the requirements.
Yes.
My question is, what if someone chooses to not put down any paved, they just want to park their vehicle on their grass? Does that still need to be screened?
Well, they wouldn't be able to park it on just their grass.
Okay,
This is a requirement saying that has to be on the gravel,
perfect.
in order to.
Okay,
park it in the
thank you for
backyard.
clarifying.
You're welcome.
Gravel or paved.
Gravel or paved, yes, yes. But not in the grass.
As I read it, it says may be used. Oh, so. Yeah, I'd like to trust your judgment. I
understand the
I'm
wording
one
there,
that-
yes. I see
Correct,
what you're
so it
getting at,
says
yeah.
paved pads may be used for recreation equipment, but like, is there a different ordinance that says recreation equipment if parked on someone's private property must be on a pad?
That would come under our surfacing requirements as a whole.
Okay. All right, thank you.
When this comes back for a final reading, it will look a little different and it'll have a little bit more context.
Okay.
As far as the other ordinances above and below it.
Yeah, I'll be kind of sandwiched in between the rest of them, so.
Further debate? We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item E, second reading of an ordinance to amend section 94-432 of the municipal code relating to vehicle and trailer parking. Mr. Dreger.
All right, thank you. This reflects what the changes that we made in the zoning amendments or text amendments rather. This is a section of our parking restrictions that allows for vehicle and trailer parking. In particular, home occupation trailers to be parked in the street. And so this is removing that since it would be conflicting with the changes that we were making in the zoning amendments. It does still allow for construction trailers associated with a project that's permitted going on at somebody's house. Those trailers are still allowed to be out in front unattached to other vehicles. But this is just clarifying and cleaning up the stuff that would conflict with our zoning amendment changes.
I know as this project began, I had lots of public comments called me and talked to me on it. It seems to have all subsided with the changes that you made.
Thank you.
I would move to direct the city manager to prepare this ordinance for a third reading at the October 17th, 2023 city council meeting.
Second.
Any further debate? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item F, second reading of an ordinance to repeal section 94-434 of the municipal code relating to taxi cab parking. Mr. Drager.
All right, I don't think there's a whole lot for me to discuss on this one. It's something that was enacted before a few years ago. I think Mr. Johnson, you touched on that last time we spoke about this. It is no longer marked. It does not get use. And I think what we're asking is just to remove that requirement. Guess I'm open to any discussion.
I'd move to direct city manager to prepare this for ordinance for a third reading, the October 17th, 2023 council meeting.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item G, review and possible action on a resolution to discontinue a portion of James Place between Talcott Street and Janesville Avenue in the city of Fort Atkinson. Mr. Salih?
Yeah, I'll pull up the PowerPoint, which I there we go. Screen share again. Are there any questions that the council has based upon that presentation I provided earlier?
I have a minor question on it. I know we had an issue earlier, a different year, where over by the medical stuff over off of Madison Avenue, where they were using their parking lot as a thoroughfare, as if it were a road.
Mhm.
Does we have that issue building here, or do we have a road? Do we got entrance from both ends that appear to connect? Will that connection still maintain? And will it become a roadway, or is it designed to be a roadway?
So I think what you're asking is related to the fireside parking lot for the most part.
Where the entrance comes in off Janesville Avenue, and then I assume that's Talcott where it finishes, goes past.
Sure. So this will have a fence around it. The yellow area here is the vacated area of James Place. The entire campus that we have will be fenced and gated, so there won't be any public thoroughfare that could develop there.
I was thinking more like where the loading dock that we're going to keep open for NASCO.
Right in here.
And does that appear to reconnect back on through the parking lot, or does that end there?
Oh, I see what you're saying. It will end here. So there'll be a gate at this location. This opening, I wish I could zoom in. Technology sometimes fails us, doesn't it? So there is an opening here to the fireside parking lot, but that will be closed. And that is generally kind of in this area right here. There's currently an area that you could come and then cut through the fireside parking lot. But that entrance will be, there'll be curb placed there and then landscaping in that area. So there won't be any cut through.
I think President Johnson might be referring to the fire lane on the backside of the building.
Ah, yes, that. Okay, sure. Yeah, there certainly is. I wouldn't necessarily say that's the most efficient way to get through that area, but that certainly could be something that could develop. It's it's fairly narrow through that section, but that might be something we want to keep an eye on and maybe put some signage in there or, you know, monitor it at a minimum. Sorry, I'm a
As
little.
Councilman Schultz might say, the public might
Yeah.
try to cut that shortcut and make it useful, and
Mhm.
that's not its design, is my guess.
Correct. Yeah, that is private property through that area. We do have an easement for a sanitary sewer there, but that's not our property. So now I'm on the same page with you. Thank you.
Can you go back to the drawing? Which, so I noticed the future edition section.
Oh, up here.
Yeah. So with this reconfigured space and some additional space that we once did not have, how confident are you that like this still has some additional room to grow on the existing footprint of what this is right here going forward without requiring any kind of additional closures?
Yeah, Tom can speak to that more succinctly, I think, on the 17th, but we did include some planning for additional square footage in there. And there's two areas. One was that area that you saw, you know, sort of over in here. And I brought this up because we do have, you know, a substantially large area here to the north, right? We're not ignoring that. But we do have some capacity to build in additional space there. In terms of do we need it and when, that's $1 million question. You know, how large is our city going to be in 10 years? How quickly are we going to grow? You know, what we've talked a lot about is a lot of the space is just to simply maintain equipment and house equipment. So we currently plow, for instance, after a snowstorm, it takes us about, I think it's 8 hours, Tom, to go through the whole city with, say, a 3-inch snow event. And that is a level of service that seems appropriate. If we grow the city and suddenly it takes us 10 hours without buying another truck, then I don't have to expand the facility, but that level of service may be something that we decide is not quite as appropriate, and we have to buy a couple of trucks and then expand the facility. So it's a little bit of a moving target, I guess, is what I'm saying. So we do have some capacity there to expand on the existing site. Whether it's enough for 50 years from now or not, currently we don't. We think it will be okay in 50 years, but you know, that's a long time to kind of project.
And just to note, we are not building the facility to only house the existing equipment that we have, right? If we buy one more truck, we don't need an addition.
Exactly.
Right. So, and we also are keeping the parks facility there as well, which will also store equipment if necessary. I want to show just again the difference in size between the current garage and
Yeah, so you can kind of scale it a bit here. So this garage, the truck shed, as we call it, is roughly the same size as the parks facility here. So when you look at the drawing, you know, we can fit probably 3 of those into this new facility here. Plus, we have the new mechanics bay in here, which is this white building here, which will be demolished. So it's a pretty substantial structure. I guess not, you know, taking off my city engineer hat and just sort of speaking as somebody, you know, in conversation, I think we've got plenty of room for the foreseeable future here. There would have to be some pretty significant changes in Fort Atkinson that we wouldn't anticipate right now to make us reconsider the space needs that we have there.
So I understand that this topic is not about the new proposed DPW building, but seeing as it's been outlaid on this property, and we've done a tour of the Stoughton DPW. Stoughton is a very similar sized community as ours, and the proposed building you had on that outlay is approximately the similar size as what they currently have. Somewhere between 80 and 90,000 square feet.
Yeah, I think we're at 70,000 on that.
The total is closer to 90,000, but that's that into the off the back of the building, that's including that.
Tom, can you go to a microphone if you're going to talk?
Facility in stone is
Tom.
Green.
The facility in Stoughton is about 90,000 square feet. This one is 70,000, and the Stoughton facility includes an extra, I think it's 18 or 20,000 square feet of cold storage off the back on the north side of their building. So this doesn't include that. However, the functional portion of the building is nearly the same.
Is
Oh,
the,
yeah.
Go
At a
ahead.
future date, will we see, well, I'm assuming we're gonna see kind of like the interior design. I believe previous things we've looked at had ingress on one side, egress on the other, and this new layout has both on the same side. And I only say this as a warehouse, like part of my job, I do warehouse planning, and in aisleways are, they're non-value added space. So by having the ingress on the same side, that could impact that, but
Yeah.
depends on how
Yeah,
you horseshoe it. And
I would encourage you, council, if you can shoot questions ahead of time, that October 17th meeting, give Tom a call, or, anything that sort of this sparks, as a boy, I wonder. We want to give you answers. So if we get those questions ahead of time, we'll make sure we have answers for you, and can that layout specifically, we have that already. I don't have it up here, but we have that available. So you'll be able to review that in detail.
the parking lot directly behind NASCO that exists yet, that would be adjacent to our new facility. That's pretty barren during the day in today's world. Does the possibility of, if we needed more space, could more parking lot be addressed to fulfill our needs? Or will it defeat the ability for a business, whether it's NASCO or something else, to facilitate the needed required parking spaces for them to maintain a business in that building?
Yeah, our zoning code has really relaxed the parking requirements that we used to have. So we have a lot more latitude to sort of dictate parking based upon what the building's use is going to be. So we will not have, as an example, we always use Pick and Save that has that monstrous parking lot out in front. That was required by the old zoning code because of the square footage and the type of building. Clearly it's not being used. So I don't think that we're in a situation there where that parking lot, the versatility of that parking lot, should it become something that we might be interested in, is going to be compromised by any sort of requirements in the zoning code.
Thank you.
Has city staff had any outreach from residents other than that plan commission in concern of this discontinuance?
I have not. I don't know if you have, Rebecca, or Tom or Jed.
We did, like, Engineer Sally said, during the plan commission, we did speak with a couple people during the plan commission meeting. And then after, we also spoke with them, just made sure their concerns were addressed.
I should note, we did, actually, Tom reached out to Paul Radenius, who owns the apartment complex immediately adjacent there, and let him know of this plan, and he was good with things too. So
I've just had one resident that lives in one of the 3 houses there that reached out to me, but when I explained what was happening, they seemed fine. So
yeah, it may have been the same that showed up at the planning commission meeting. I think it was one of the 3 houses on Eric, if I remember correctly.
if this moves forward, my question is, when would it be discontinued, or when would it not be blocked off until, construction happens? It would still remain open until that point?
Yeah, we haven't really talked about that in detail, but just sort of off the cuff, as soon as we begin demolition in the areas when we kind of need that space. So it won't be immediate effective. If you approve it this evening, we won't close the street tomorrow. So it'll probably be sometime after the first of the year.
There's no other comments. I move to approve the resolution to discontinue a portion of James Place between Talcott Street and Janesville Avenue in the city of Fort Atkinson.
second.
Any further comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item 8, reports of officers, boards, and committees. City manager's report.
Thank you. FEMA, in coordination with the FCC, will conduct a nationwide test of emergency alert system and the wireless emergency alerts tomorrow at 1:20. So all cell phones will receive an alert, even if they're silenced. So we do have some more information on that on the city's website, if anybody's interested in that. Fire Prevention Week is October 8th through the 14th. This year's campaign revolves around cooking safety. To coincide with that, the Fort Atkinson Fire Department will hold an open house at the department on October 14th from 11 to 3. There'll be brats, hot dogs, raffles, station tours, and gear and tool demonstrations. The city donated 2 old vehicles to the Fort Atkinson High School Automotive Technology classes today. Public Works Operations Mechanics Nick Brown and Don Kanak presented the retired police squad car, which was also re-retired from use in the engineering department. So you can imagine what kind of shape that was in. And a truck from the water utility to the class. Hopefully this positive interaction between city employees and students will encourage students to consider part-time, seasonal, or full-time work with the city in the future. I have volunteered to be part of a work group organized by the League of Wisconsin Municipalities and the Department of Revenue relating to the implementation of Act 12. The law provides additional shared revenue for municipality, but it also created a lot of new reporting requirements and requirements to maintain certain levels of service in police and fire departments. So I will be working with this group of local government officials as well as DOR, Department of Revenue representatives to create those administrative rules relating to Act 12. That first meeting is in October 12th in Madison. Also today, I met with administrators, managers, and mayors from the other municipalities in Jefferson County for our regular meeting to discuss municipal issues as well as potential ways to collaborate on shared services. Another part of Act 12 is the creation of an innovation fund, which will provide grants to local governments to encourage shared services and or consolidation in the future. So we are looking ahead to that. The Police and Fire Commission will meet on October 16th to review candidates for the Fire and EMS Chief position. The commission will provide feedback to the recruiter on candidates to be interviewed, and interviews are tentatively scheduled for the last 2 weeks of October. And finally, staff continues to prepare the 2024 draft budget and 2024 to 2029 CIP for the City Council workshop on October 11th, beginning at 4 p.m. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, have we still on course with a choosing of a new fire chief?
Yep, the Police and Fire Commission will meet on the 16th of October to review candidates to interview.
Terrific. Item 9, unfinished business. Tonight we have none. Item 10, new business. Review and possible action relating to a certified survey map dictating a 75-foot wide right-of-way along the east side of the property located at 925 Lexington Boulevard to the city for future public infrastructure purposes. Mr. Sully.
Thank you. This is a affectionately known as the high school campus access road. City staff had approached the school district of Fort Atkinson's school board about this. They at their meeting had a number of questions related to this, but were unanimously in approval of this dedication of land for a public right-of-way. The Planning Commission entertained and heard this at their meeting last Tuesday as well. A few questions from the Planning Commission, but also approved it and moved it on here tonight to the City Council. This right-of-way is, as you may recall, we do have an easement already in place for utilities to be installed in this area to get out to our Banker Road property. After further consideration, it became clear that a road probably would be the appropriate addition to that easement. So this right-of-way will allow us to construct such within that corridor. The timing for that is likely as early as next year, more likely probably in 2025. But those details on schedule will kind of come into focus here, I think, in the next few months. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that council might have related to this certified survey map.
Andy, maybe, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Has the school district had any issues or concerns, challenges with what this may, how it may impact their arrival times in the morning? And then 2 questions, I guess, before I forget the second one. It will continue to be one way through there, or will this become a 2-way road?
Yeah, both questions that they asked. So we did do a traffic impact analysis study in the area there. So we don't really run into any potential congestion until such time as we may be asked to close Campus Drive for the addition of a new middle school, and that's way off in the future. Otherwise, most of the access points that we have in the area, even with the Banker Road development, will function fairly well. We will have a light that will likely be installed at Banker Road and Madison Avenue. So that will be really the area that is most concerning. The second area that is maybe not terribly concerning, but an area that was pointed out as potential congestion for about 30 minutes a day is at the north end of this vacated right of way where we have Trillium Drive and a new public road intersecting. The impact analysis suggested that we put in a traffic circle in that area. And I think the term was, I'm going to get this wrong, but it was like a small version as being a very efficient way to sort of translate a lot of traffic in various directions at that location. As far as the one-way goes, this will be eventually a two-way road when it is fully constructed. But it will remain one way until the needs dictate that we go two-way, right? So that would be when Trillium Drive is open and things of that nature. The school does not have, they did ask a few questions about the entrances to their campus. In particular, the road going around the backside of campus near the football fields and soccer facilities. They had asked if those could be created as two-way roads or if they remain one-way roads. That's all their own property. But we have had those discussions about circulation in the area in a larger context. I think I got it. Two of your questions, maybe threw a few extra tidbits in there too.
Yes,
So
thanks.
any other questions?
I was just going to note that it may be dedicated to the city, but it would be maintained, can continue to be maintained by the school district until such time that the city was ready to build a road.
I move to approve the certified survey map dedicating a 75-foot wide right of way along the east side of the property located at 925 Lexington Boulevard to the city for future public infrastructure purposes.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item B, possible review and possible action relating to the amendment for agreement for professional services between the city and R.A. Smith for a preliminary assessment of a transportation utility. Mr. Sully.
Yeah, thank you. So we've talked about this for a couple of different years. I don't know if we formally talked about it here in council chambers in a council meeting, but I think in the budgeting process, it's come up a few different times. One of the ways that municipalities are looking at trying to manage the gap in funding between road infrastructure maintenance needs and the available funds through the levy is by establishing a transportation utility. If you think of the utility essentially exactly as our current utilities operate, we provide a service and those that use the service provide a fee for that service. So you turn on the tap and you have water and you pay for the units of water that you use. Take a shower and we treat the wastewater that comes from your house or business. And you pay for that treatment and the number of units that we treat. The stormwater utility, we treat the water before it gets into the river that falls on the private properties, and we pay, or the businesses and residents pay for that treatment that the city provides. The transportation utility is very similar to that. So we have roads that require maintenance, and those are maintained, and that service is provided by the city, and the users, those that are driving on those roads, pay for that service. The long-term, I think, look at this is to, as I said, try to establish some sort of a mechanism by which we can continue to maintain our level of service and increase it. We're falling woefully behind. And as we get into this assessment, we'll provide some numbers and things like that to make it more clear what the actual need is. But this is a first step towards beginning to understand what a transportation utility might look like within the city of Fort Atkinson. The units that we'll be talking about, so as I mentioned, water for the utility units, the units that we'd be looking at for transportation utility are trips. So there is a manual that indicates what the average number of trips are for a particular parcel and land use. And that manual would say something to the effect of for city government, municipal building, you may generate 30 trips per day. And for a gas station, you may generate 100 trips per day or something along those lines. I think we can all kind of guess in our head what types of land uses may generate more trips or less trips than others. And that number of trips becomes the unit of measurement for a transportation utility. So we've engaged with Jeff Mazonik from R.A. Smith. He's been very much at the forefront within the state of looking at these transportation utilities. There has been some of them have been tried in court as to whether they've been tested in court, I should say, as to whether they are legal utilities under the law. I think the majority of them have survived. There's still one or two out there that are going through that process that you often have with these new types of funding sources to be vetted. But Jeff has been intimately involved in a number of successful ones. And so through the conversations that we've had with him, he suggested our first step would be, as we're proposing this evening, essentially just taking a quick look at Fort Atkinson. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of, I'm going to guess here, I think we're about 5,000 or 4,500 properties, something like that, and beginning to understand, what those types of units, so to speak, might be for trip generation, what our need is to be able to continue to fund our transportation maintenance and improvement into the future. And with those two pieces of information, begin to get a look at what a transportation utility might look like. I think one of the important things that we want to emphasize with this is that it is just preliminary. We're simply trying to get some data so that we can take a look at this and provide council some information so that we can educate you as much as ourselves in this endeavor. The second thing is our intent with this would be to remove the wheel tax. So this would not be in addition to the vehicle registration fee, or the wheel tax as it's affectionately known. And the portion that we have within the levied budgets would remain such. So what we're trying to do is actually get more funding so that we can make improvements that we're unable to make now. You might recall some of the discussions we had last year with the 2022 street program, trying to get sidewalks in there. We couldn't because we didn't have the funds to do some of those things. We're beginning to get limited with the amount of water main we can replace and the associated pot of money for roads to replace over the top of that new water main. So some of these things are beginning to come to light, and we're not in a position to continue to just simply use the rather static funding that we have through the vehicle registration fee, as well as the levied funds that we appropriate to this to be able to meet the coming demands that we have. So with that, actually, Manager Lemire, do you have any, or I'm sorry, Houseman, do you have any thing to add to that I missed?
I just that the cost for the preliminary assessment is $13,786, and staff does propose to use ARPA funds or funds from the American Rescue Plan Act for this because it was not in the budget. However, I will note in the 2023 budget, we did say there was information about reviewing the possibility of a transportation utility. So this would be that first step. And then information gathered through this process would come back to the city council for additional information and potential action in the future.
Any questions I can answer?
Yes, my only thing, we definitely do need to look at other sources of funding this way. I just don't want to go and, by the way you're talking, it's gonna go off of traffic. So like big companies, say Jones Dairy Farm and stuff like that, they have a lot of traffic in and out in the day. Is that going to affect them and potentially cause other businesses look and say, we don't want to come to Fort? I just want to make sure we keep that in mind, as we have the industrial park that's sitting empty on the south side. It's potentially another scare as we're losing businesses in town as it is, I don't want to scare off new businesses.
Sure. And this will give us actual answers to that. Otherwise, we're just sort of taking our best guess, right?
Yep.
In the big picture, the wheel tax is cool at the moment, I think, because it does give us money directly towards the roads. But it's not a completely level playing field because there are, I believe, trucking companies who have many wheels and many poundage put and wear on our roads that don't contribute. Will this solve some of that issue and make more of a level playing field?
Yes, it is. It is specifically for the users of the road. So it's trips, right? So it is, if the property generates 500 trips, then that property is benefiting from the infrastructure that we have in place and that we maintain and keep at a level of service that allows that property to thrive. And so that number of trips is then translated into a cost for the use of that infrastructure.
And just to comment, I think as city council, we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. One is the number one complaint I usually hear is the condition of our roads. But with our current funding, I think plus what we have budgeted in the fund plus the wheel tax comes out to somewhere between $600,000-700,000, which paves maybe a mile of two-lane road.
Less than a mile.
And we have 70-ish miles of road in town. So when people want their streets repaired, it's like, well, which mile in town do you want done this year? And the other side, the hard place, I guess, is trying to keep costs down and attractive for businesses. But I think something has to be done. And hopefully this assessment can bring to light some options and solutions.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're at least going to look at this and start looking at the data. I just think we're in a place where, we passed the wheel tax about 8 years ago now, and it has helped us keep up a little bit. We did make some significant progress, but the realities of costs going up and inflation have made that harder and harder, I think, especially over the last 2-3 years. And it's always been clear that the wheel tax was not a sustainable funding mechanism. It was always the same pot of money. It doesn't grow. It's flat. I think over time we do have to come up with new, more sustainable sources of revenue. One thing I want to point out, we recently have had residents complain here in this chamber about the state of our sidewalks and how many of our sidewalks in our community, especially in older neighborhoods, are in really bad shape. And for the most part, we haven't had any sort of plan to address those proactively. If we were to move to a transportation utility, that would give us a mechanism to also look at sidewalks, correct?
It would, but not necessarily through the transportation utility. I think we'll vet that more formally, but my understanding from most of those that have been set up is that the sidewalk funds often come from that pot of money that we're supplanting. So that money that we have currently in the levied funds or in the budget of about $500,000 towards roads, that money, we can carve out more of that for sidewalks, whereas currently we don't. We basically forego sidewalk improvements with that to pay for road money. The transportation utility, those that have been set up that I've reviewed, generally is specific to actual curb and gutter roadway, what we would consider to be the road surface in general. That's not to say that we can't change that as we, go through and review some of this data, but that's what's been practiced so far.
Okay, no, I appreciate that clarification. And I think right now that's what we're looking for. We're just looking for more data to see if this would be something that would make sense for the city to implement or not, so.
And I should note, if you didn't catch it in the scope, the end of this contract is Jeff Mazonik coming in, giving a presentation to the council with not only data that he's collected from myself and my department with respect to our local costs, but also the analysis that he's provided. So I think we'll get an opportunity to really publicly ask those questions and kind of see what the results are firsthand.
Will this project include possibly keeping, say, the township of Koshkanon in the loop of what's going on and what we need to accomplish? My question is based on one of the complaints, not just a condition of our sidewalks that I was aware of, was like, say, by Berry School, where the city of Fort and the township of Koshkonong interweave, where children who travel by foot to Berry School may find themselves one where the city has sidewalks as part of what is required, and then the next house over is township of Koshkonong that doesn't require it. So we've got kids on sidewalks and then kids dumped out into the roadway to walk to school, and they're grade schoolers. Is that part of the issue we might address with this?
I think with the transportation utility, the town of Koshkonong role there. So we've always indicated that, you know, there's the use of our infrastructure is much greater than those that are within the municipal limits of Fort Atkinson, right? We all, I myself, you know, we live around the area. We come here to work, to enjoy the schools, to use the grocery, to come to the churches, all that sort of thing. The transportation utility begins to take that into account by using that trip generation to begin to understand what the value of that land use is in the city of Fort Atkinson. So it doesn't necessarily, you know, it doesn't reach out and provide a wheel tax for the town of Koshkonong residents by any means. But if we are coming into the city of Fort Atkinson but don't live here, utilizing the grocery store, utilizing the school district and things like that, we are generating trips, and those trips are accounted for within that transportation utility. So I think that is the most direct relationship to the town of Koshkonong with respect to the transportation utility. Specific to the sidewalks that you're talking about over by Berry School, we have a plan in place for those as well. Those are relic town islands that are still around, where the parcel itself is within the town of Koshkonong, and it really doesn't give the city of Fort Atkinson any continuity through there to be able to maintain the roads and sidewalks and things like that. And we do have an agreement in place to try to get rid of those over time. It still needs to be formalized, but that's how we're addressing that particular specific situation.
The memo notes that a few utilities like this have been established in Wisconsin. Do we know where?
I knew I was going to get that question. So Jeff is Masonic. I'm going to ask him not tonight, but when he provides me some of the initial asks for data and whatnot, I'm going to ask him to give me a rundown. He's got a PowerPoint presentation that I didn't quite get to this evening to look at that, but I think there's a handful of successful utilities and probably a handful and a half that are in the making or that are paused right now, just looking at how the legal issues are going to work out. I think I'm reasonably close there. So, but I'll get you some specifics on that.
And from what you know about these, are they sort of similar in concept to the stormwater utility creation? I mean, is it?
Yep.
Like,
it's almost identical from what I understand. The construct of the utility, as you guys have learned, as council has learned, the utility sort of operates as a separate, almost business within the city government in terms of its accounting and reporting and things like that. This transportation utility would be exactly the same. We would define again the unit of measurement for the service that the city provides, and then we would assign a cost to that unit of measurement. In this case, a trip. So a trip might cost $7, and if you generate 10 trips, then a $70 fee would be the annual transportation utility fee, much like the stormwater utility, where we assign the impervious area. It's called the ERU, or the equivalent residential runoff unit. And we say that costs $50 per ERU, and most residential properties have one ERU, and a place like, we'll use Pick and Save again for an example, with a large expanse of parking lot, they may have 50 ERUs and pay $2,500 a year in stormwater fees. So very similar setup there.
Would this potentially reduce property taxes then in place of it? Or
I don't have a good answer for that. So two parts of that. We definitely intend to supplant the wheel tax, right? That's that is, we want to make very clear. But we want to make an improvement here. We're not just simply asking for a different kind of money to maintain. We want to be able to make things better. And so our property taxes are based on, in part, on that $500,000 of funding that we have for the road. So I don't know for sure, but if I had to answer right now, I would say we'd want to keep that $500,000 and then add some additional transportation funds to that so that we can make that improvement. So in that logic, property taxes, I don't think would go down, because we would simply be getting at those things that we're frankly not getting at very well right now.
A question for the city manager, using ARPA funds, do we know how much, what do we have remaining approximately in that amount? And is there a time frame to use it up?
Yeah, so there is, I think as of 1/1/23, we had just over $1 million left. We do have some placeholders for that money. So it's not just, I mean, right now it's gathering interest, which is good. We all know interest is doing good things right now if you have savings. We have to have it all spent by the end of 2026. We have to have it all allocated by the end of 2024.
I guess one thing, I know the representative from the company's on here, but we only solicited one bid. Is that simply because R.A. Smith's the only firm in Wisconsin so far that's been kind of looking at this?
There are other firms that have looked at this, certainly, but Jeff, it was very clear after kind of looking into some research on those municipalities that established one. We first heard Jeff speak, I think it was 2 years ago at the League conference in Green Bay. He sort of established himself as a bit of an authority on the subject. So in this particular situation, I felt very comfortable kind of sole sourcing it. The amount of money that we're looking at to kind of dip our toe in the water to is small enough, at least by municipal standards, that I think we're okay and just moving ahead with R.A. Smith and not entertaining casting a wider net for this.
In terms of studies these days, it's a very reasonable fee comparatively. Yeah, I know this is a newer thing in our state, but Fort Atkinson's had to lead the way on certain things before, and maybe taking a look at this is another way that Fort Atkinson's going to kind of lead the way again. And we continue to get complaints from residents about the state of our roads, even though we have made a lot of progress the last 8 years or so. And if there's an opportunity to improve our roads significantly and do it in a more fair and more equitable manner, I think we need to take a look at that. So
I move to approve the agreement for professional services between the city and R.A. Smith for a preliminary assessment of a transportation utility for $13,786 using American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Council President Johnson, I'm going to mention that the next item actually will be presented by our Superintendent of Public Works, Tom Williamson.
Thank you. Item C, review and possible action relating to proposals for pre-demolition inspection services of buildings to be raised in association with the Public Works and Parks Operation Facility Project. Tom.
I was planning on doing this, so. So this is just in anticipation of the project at the Public Works facility moving forward in the future here. One of the items that we'll have that'll come before you as we move through the approvals process is we have to remove buildings from this facility in order to construct a new facility. So as part of that process,
required by the DNR. We need to assess these the buildings that are going to be removed for hazardous materials such as asbestos and lead paint. So in anticipation of that, I reached out to several firms, recommended with Andy Selly, and we put out an RFP and requested their to put together some service agreements with us and take a look at what the costs will be. Just lost it. Bear with me for a moment. I'm also not used to this computer. Okay, so what you'll find in here, again, after proper inspection and potential mitigation of any hazardous materials, the buildings may be raised as soon as the fourth quarter of 2023 or the first quarter of 2024. It's for building demolition will come before council, of course, prior to any commencement of any work. So 3 firms did return bids to us. I believe we reached out to 4, but we did get 3 bids back. And the bid tabulation tables before you. The standout, of course, was North Star Environmental Testing. They were by far the most reasonable in cost. They did give us a range. 2 of the firms bid this, and they gave us a range in anticipation of how much material they have to test. They couldn't give us a solid number, but they did give us a range of $6,410 to $7,230. And after review, staff is recommending approving the contract with North Star Environmental Testing for the amount not to exceed $7,230 to be paid using proceeds from the borrowing per the attached resolution, and authorize staff to execute the contract. Any questions?
But I know it's kind of quiet. I'm just double checking some items. I usually when a quote comes in that much lower than the peers.
They missed
but I was-
something.
Yeah, they're missing something. And so I'd want to make sure that, I'm just kind of reviewing the quote. You're confident, you've reviewed, you've also looked at these quotes that they'll still be able to provide the level of service that we're expecting.
Yeah, as the scopes were kind of laid out within the proposals themselves, they were all respective of the number of facilities that we have and the amount of testing that they would have to put forth to obtain lead samples, lead paint samples, and all the asbestos sampling to meet all the requirements for the DNR.
None of this includes like groundwater or like soil contamination. It's just the
This is
building
just
above ground. Okay.
Tom, have we worked with North Star previously?
I believe they were the ones that worked with us on the Lorman property.
Okay,
Mhm.
so we had a good experience with them there, from what I recall.
We did.
Yeah. Good. I will move to approve the proposal from North Star Environmental Testing LLC for an amount not to exceed $7,230 for pre-demolition inspection services of buildings to be raised in association with the Public Works and Parks Operations Facility Project.
Second.
Any further debate? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 11, miscellaneous. Tonight we have none. Item 12, claims, appropriations, and contract payments. Review and possible action relating verified claims presented by the Director of Finance and authorized by authorization of payment.
I would move to approve the list of verified claims presented by the Director of Finance and authorize payment.
Second.
This is a roll call vote.
Councilman Becker,
Aye.
Councilman Jekyll,
Aye.
Councilman Lesko Hair.
Aye.
Councilman Schultz.
Aye.
President Johnson.
Aye. Motion carries. Item 13, adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, folks.